Hello everyone, this is Lance. This is Mahjong Tips 11. The original title of this video was Defense Against Half Flush. Then I thought about it, then I was like, maybe the title doesn't make sense because who doesn't know how to defend against a half flush? People do 万子, then you just throw all your 童子 and 硕子, then that will be the end of the video already. So, yeah, I thought about it. I changed the title to versus half flush, so it's like you're attacking against a half flush. Okay, so in a lot of my commentary videos, okay, I advocate a more offensive style of mahjong. Okay, because if you don't attack, then you can't win. Okay, if you keep defending, then people can still 自摸 and you will still lose money or points or whatever you're playing. Okay, so you need to attack. Okay, but attacking is not the same as suiciding. Okay, it's like you go into a war with a better plan and strategy. Okay, so you know what you're doing, then you can win the war. Okay, you don't just like charge forward and then get shot down by the first person who like you chong onto the battlefield and then you're shot down by the first enemy. Okay, so when we play mahjong, right, we also have to consider that what other players are doing. Okay, so in this case we are considering the situation where the other players are doing half flush, which is 半色. Okay, for the rest of the video I'll call this 半色. Okay. Okay, so first let's talk about what 半色 looks like. Okay, so let's say someone melded 3 times, so 吃123万碰7万碰北. Okay, in any order, doesn't matter. Okay, so does it mean that the player is definitely doing 万字 or not? Okay, then you have to look at the kind of tiles that the player discarded. Okay, if from the start, right, the player already threw 万字 okay, and then like maybe he got 台 already, maybe 北 is his 台 or something. So if he from the start already threw 万字, then he doesn't have to be doing 半色. Okay, it could just be a coincidence that the 3 males happen to be all look like is all 万字 or 大牌 or 自拍. Okay, so these cards are more important than males when determining whether someone is doing 半色 or not. Okay, a common mistake among a lot of mahjong players is that they just look at the tiles that are caught by a player to determine whether they are doing 半色, but they never consider the discards made by the player. Okay, so right, let's look at what a typical discard the let's look at what the typical discards of a player doing 半色 looks like. Okay, so first one, like this. So you see that this player at the start, right, he throw all 童子 and 万子. Okay, then 自牌 start to come out. Okay, then by the time 硕子 come out, right, you need to be wary that this player might already be already be 听牌 lah, because he already start to overflow the suit that he's doing. Okay, so I repeat, the other 2 suits will come out first, then the 自牌 will come out. Okay, then by the time he 听牌, he would like if he overflows, right, then you will strongly suspect that he 听牌 already lah. Okay, so if this player already started to discard 硕子 at the start, right, even if he were to 碰 or 吃 a lot of 硕子, he could be just it could just be a coincidence that his smells are all 硕子. Okay, of course, the tiles, this discard pool is arranged very nicely, right? This is from the Play Mahjong stream. Okay, but in normal Singapore Mahjong games, the discards are all in the center. Okay, so it's not as easy to determine whether someone is doing 半色 or not. Okay, you need to have some need to do some memory work. Okay, but when I play at higher stakes, right, the players are extremely alert. They are usually able to determine if someone, like they can determine correctly if someone is doing 半色 or not doing 半色. Like they would know at the start, did you already throw the suit or you actually threw the other 2 suits and focus on one suit. Okay, so don't just look at the mails, you have to pay attention to the discards also. Okay, another example. So this one was in Richie, is in one of my recent streams. Okay, so this one actually 听牌 extremely early, so throw all the 童子 and 万子, then 万字牌 come out, right? Then by the time I overflow the 硕子, right, I have already 听牌 for a 门清半射 in 硕子. Okay. Okay, next one. Okay, okay, this discards, right, have 童子 and 硕子 but no 万子, right? Okay, but at the start, a 发财 was discarded. Okay, this is an example of a situation where the player might have tried to strike a balance. So at the start wasn't aiming for 半射. Maybe the hand looked like a mixture of suits, then keep the chance to do a normal hand. But then the player keep drawing a lot of 万子, then decided, oh, I just throw the other suits first and see whether I got a chance to do 半射. And when the player keep 金牌 万子, then discard every other suit and focus on just 万子. Okay, another example. Okay, this one, right? This one you have to be even more careful of the player, okay? Because the player only throws 硕子 and 万子, right? But from the start, the player already started to discard the 自拍 already, which means that the hand is like so good, right? It only consists of 童子 and 自拍 from the very beginning. So that is extremely scary. Okay, so you need to be even more wary of this type of hands, and if you are the 上家, you need to be even more careful. Okay, so typical 半射 discards, of course, like I said, for Singapore Mahjong, when all the tiles are in the middle, it's harder to see. Okay, so this is for illustration purpose. If you're playing Singapore Mahjong, you need to be more alert in taking notice of the tiles that people are throwing. Okay, okay, moving on. Let's consider a situation where the player on your right is doing 硕子. Okay, so you with your hand now, you are one away from 听牌. Okay, let's say you already 吃了碰 twice and you have 台. Okay, so you want to win this hand, but at the same time, you need to be wary of the player on the right whose discards and mails are pointing towards a 硕子半射. Okay, so over here, although the 141 and 691 are both good weights, okay, what you should do is actually keep the 454 because it doesn't make sense for you to throw 2 extra 硕子 for your 下家 to call them, okay, when you could just keep them and still retain the same speed for your hand. Okay, so you like yeah, so there are some players, right, they don't think this way, although it seems like common sense, right? If your 下家 is doing 硕子, then why you go and feed him 硕子? Okay, you just break one of the 万子 set. Okay, so this sounds like common sense, but I have seen some Mahjong players, right, who don't think this way. Like they, how to say, like they think they have this mentality, if the 下家 doing 硕子, that means my 硕子 won't come, so I just throw away my 硕子, I just focus on the other suits. Okay, but they seem to have forgotten that if you throw the 硕子 for the 下家 to eat, right, then the player on your right has a higher chance to win, so he can actually, you giving him extra speed. You don't even need to draw the 硕子 himself, you're giving it to him. So you give him a booster to his speed, so helping him win before you. Okay, so that doesn't make sense. So in this case, right, you should break one of the 万子 and keep as much 硕子 in your hand as possible to delay the player on your right. Okay. Okay, what if I change the hand slightly? I change the 五硕 to 六硕, then now it becomes a 卡龙 五硕. Okay, so if you want to keep both the 硕子 in your hand, you are actually sacrificing speed. Right, now it's not the same speed, you don't have the two-sided weights anymore. So you are in a dilemma, right? You don't know whether you want to break the 硕子 to increase your speed, or you want to keep the 硕子 so that you don't feed them to your 下家. Okay, now in this situation, this is not so clear cut. Just now it was all two-sided weight, so obviously you just keep the 硕子. Okay, no change in speed. Okay, it just looks nicer to wait on the side tiles, like E1 G1. Okay, but just now you can still keep the 锁子 as a two-sided weight. What about this? Okay, this one, right? There's a there's a lot more things you need to consider, because you just because someone is doing 半射, right, doesn't mean that the person's hand can be necessarily big. Okay, you have to think about whether how many tai the player on the right will have and how many tai you have. Okay, if you like already, if let's say you're playing Singapore Mahjong and then you got four animals, I mean three animals and one flower. Okay, or if you're playing Richie and then you got three Dora. Okay, obviously you want to focus on winning this hand. Okay, the player, it is worth pushing the 锁子 against the player on the right, because you want to maximize your chance of winning this hand. Okay, so when your hand is worth pushing the 锁子 to increase your speed, right, then you just break the 锁子 set and try to win as fast as possible. Okay, but when your hand is low value, okay, when your hand is low value, then it's no longer worth to um let the to give your the player on your right a head start. Okay, so if your hand is just some rubbish hand value, right, you should just be like just now and then break one of the ones set. Okay, so I reiterate, if you want to maximize your chance of winning this hand because the hand value is big, you break the 锁子 because the risk reward is worth it. Okay, but if your hand value is shitty, then you just break one of the ones because there's not much point pushing the two 锁子 against the player on your right when your hand value is crappy. Okay, let's move on. Okay, this is one of the commentaries that I did recently, so I thought this was a good example to recap what we have just talked about. Okay, firstly, the player opposite, he 碰2锁 and 6锁. So sometimes some mahjong players, they just straight away look at this, then they say, oh, this person doing 锁子. Okay, but then you just open your eyes and see he throw 字牌 and 锁子 from the very start. So it's just a coincidence that he happened to call 2锁子. Okay, the hand could just be a mixture and then he just rush to win the hand. Okay, so the discards are more important than the melts. The melts could be coincidental. You need to pay more attention to what the player is throwing. Okay, then enough about this player. Let's look at the player on the right. Now the player on the right is throwing the discards, right, it reflects the typical 半射 hand. So discards in 2 suits and then later in the hand then clear the 字牌. Okay, so this one is a standard 童子 半射 hand. So when you are sitting on the left, you need to be wary. Okay, but then because the person already 吃 or 碰 3 times, then very high chance already 听牌. So wherever you are sitting is the same. Okay, so how should you react? Okay, so like I say, right, I favor offensive mahjong. So you tell me that with this hand you just break and defend, okay, I cannot do it, because you got a cat, and then you got double tong and you got 白板. The hand value is super worth it. Okay, so no point breaking this hand now. Okay, how I'll play this hand is I would keep as much 童子 as possible. So now you draw 2 tong, right, keep this and break the 8-1 and 6-1 that 卡龙. Okay, which one is 8-1 and 3-1, okay, then you keep one 1子 set, and you can still 碰 the 白板 and tong. Okay, at the same time you see whether the 童子 like more will come or not, like maybe another 2 tong come, then all the 童子 they're all useful. Okay, if not, by the time you 听牌, right, okay, then you only need to discard 1 童子 against the 下家. Okay, but any of the 童子 has a chance to feed. So we don't need to be paranoid about one particular 童子, because all of them have an equal chance. Like you cannot do a process of elimination here. So right now it's not worth to push the 童子 because you are still far from 听牌. But by the time you 听牌, right, it could be a very big hand already. Then you just push 1 童子 against the 下家, the probability of that one 童子 feeding is not that high considering that there's a lot of 童子 that can feed. Okay, so by the time when it's worth it, you push one 童子 to 听牌. Okay, so to reiterate, before you 听牌, you try to keep as much 童子 as possible, try to use up as much 童子 as possible. But when you 听牌and it's worth already, like the value is very worth to push, then you just push the 童子 to 听牌. Okay. Okay, then moving on. Just now we talked about the situations where the 下家 is the one who is doing 半射, right? Let's consider what if the other players opposite or on the left is doing 半射. Okay. Oh, sorry, I missed out. got one more example. Okay, what if the annoying player on the right is doing 锁子 and you got an extremely nice hand like this? Okay, and you definitely want to fight with this hand, like it's quite nice for 清一色, right? Okay, so what you should do is you should delay the 锁子 as far as possible, so you should throw all the 童子 first. Okay, if the player on the right is the one doing 锁子, then there's no way that you can like throw the 锁子 earlier so that he like to prevent him from feeding him, you throw the swords earlier. Okay, you can't do that because he's on your right, he can eat. Okay, so unless he later then draw the set lah, but it's more likely that he already has the sets in his hand, that's why he do 半射. Okay, so you try to delay his suit as long as possible so that you can match his, I mean, you don't let him 听牌 faster, because if he 听牌 faster, then he got more chance to win. Okay, by the time that your hands get better and closer to 听牌 okay, then you release the 锁子 for him. Okay, then you will be on even ground. You 听牌 and you also feed him to 听牌. You don't let him 听牌earlier and have more chance to win you. Okay. Okay, sorry, now I move on to the situation where the player on the left or opposite is doing 半射. Okay, now the situation has changed. Okay, these players cannot eat tiles from you. So instead of delaying the 锁子 feed, right, you need to discard that 锁子 as early as possible so that you don't ferment until they 听牌 then you feed them. Okay, so repeat, if the player on the right is doing 半射, you delay feeding him as far as possible because you don't want him to eat and then reach 听牌 earlier than you. Okay, but if other players not on your right are doing 半射, okay, you want to clear the dangerous tiles as quickly as possible before they 听牌 because they can't eat from you. Okay, one last point. If the player on your 上家 or the player opposite, right, if they are doing 半射, let's say they are doing 半射 锁子, and your hand may be very good value, maybe 5 台, okay, in any Mahjong game. So you got an extra tong and you got an extra 武硕 that you need to throw. Now maybe you 1 away from 听牌, then both of these you got to clear. So which one should you throw first? Because many players will instinctively throw the 自拍 first before they throw the center, like the numbered tile. Okay, so let me explain to you about, like, this might seem minor at first glance, okay, but it's not. Okay, you should know by now that a lot of small decisions in Mahjong can create a ripple effect where just because of that one decision it can determine the whole game. Okay, even if it seems very minor. Okay, so whether to throw tong or 武硕 first okay, so remember that the player opposite or on your left, they cannot eat tiles from you, but they can pong tiles from you. So let's say either, like, whichever is doing 半射, if they need both 武硕 and tong, okay, the tong can only be pong, the tong cannot be eaten. Okay, so if they need both tong and 武硕, if you throw the tong first, they can pong the tong and then win on your 武硕. Okay, like let's say they are like 二武硕 or 五八缩尾, they can 碰 your 东 and then win on your 武硕. But if you throw the 武硕 first, they can't eat, and then you throw the 东, they 碰, but and now they 听牌 on the 武硕, but you already throw already. Okay, so in this case, you consider which is the tile that they can 碰. You delay the tile that they can 碰. You throw the tile that they can eat first, because they can't eat from you if they're opposite or on your left. Okay, so in this case, you should throw the 武硕 first, then throw the 东. Of course, if they can 碰 both, then no difference lah, you just die lah. Okay, but I'm saying that if it's no difference, then no difference lah, then nothing to talk about, nothing to discuss. Okay, but if they're going to 碰东 and 听牌 on the 武硕, then definitely clear the 武硕 first, then 碰 then throw the 东. Okay, so I hope that you learned something from this video. Okay, thank you everyone for watching. Bye bye.